Welcome to the Women's Business Workshop podcast, the podcast for business owners looking for support on all those things that you didn't realize you would be in charge of when you decided to open a business. I have a favorite guest on today's podcast that I am so excited for. It is Nikki Rausch of the Sales Maven, and she is our first three-peat guest for the podcast. If you're new to this podcast, I'm Robin Walker, small business advisor that helps small business owners bridge the gap between being experts in their field and running a successful business. If you're running a business and feeling like it's all too much to balance some days, that's where I can help. In the words of one of my clients, I appreciate how you were able to help me clarify multiple aspects of my business that I've been turning over and over in my head for some time without being able to move forward. When you feel ready to move forward with more intention and strategy in your business, I'd love to invite you to set up a quick, no-cost call to see if coaching or our Impact Business Circle Mastermind would be helpful to you and your business. A quick link is in the show notes. Now on to today's episode. I am honored to introduce you to Nikki Rausch. CEO of Sales Maven, Nikki Rausch has the unique ability to transform the misunderstood process of selling. With 25 years of selling experience, entrepreneurs and small business owners now hire Nikki to show them how to sell successfully and authentically. Nikki has written 3 books, all available on Amazon, and she has a podcast called Sales Maven, which you can find on all your favorite podcast platforms. Let's welcome Nikki to the program. Hi, Nikki. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me back. I'm so excited to be here.
For those of you listening, Nikki and I got to meet each other in person, which is often rare in the online business world. When I hosted a conference, Nikki was a speaker at the event, so we got to hang out in person, which is so fun.
It was a great conference, getting to have that time with you. And I met some of the most incredible women at your conference who I still think about. Some I'm still in contact with. And it was just such a pleasure to be there. So thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so thankful that you could be there. And so I'm going to jump into, I did your bio in the intro. I was fortunate to meet you in the early days of my business. And so I feel for people who are trying to figure out sales as an entrepreneur all on their own without your wisdom. So I see it as a blessing that I got to know you right away early in my business. And I have to say, you opened my eyes to sales being a conversation, an invitation, and how it's something that could be done with integrity. So I thank you for that. So listeners, we'll be talking about sales today through the lens of being an entrepreneur or a small business owner where you're selling yourself, which is a lot harder, I think, than selling for someone else. Mm-hmm. So I want to start off, though, that we've known each other for a little while and our businesses were a little bit different when we first met. What's one thing that's changed either about your business or you as a business owner since we first talked? I believe it was 2019.
Yeah, gosh. Well, one thing is I launched my own podcast in 2020. Prior to that, I was guesting on podcasts and launching my own podcast. And now just having celebrated 6 years of having the podcast, it's over 300 episodes. I think one of the things that has changed is by having a podcast, it has really allowed for me to hone my thought leadership. And so I think when you and I met, I had some things that felt very like me and the stuff that I teach. And I just think over the last few years of having the podcast and having this opportunity to have like my voice out into the world, which is different than guesting. Guesting, you're getting asked questions and you're answering questions, and sometimes those questions are fed to the host, but oftentimes it's a conversation, so you kind of don't know where it's going to go. But having my own podcast has really allowed for me to lean into how do I really think, and what do I actually do in the selling process, in the conversations, in the coaching when I'm working with somebody. Like, what are the things that really work and work quickly. And so that's, I think, maybe the biggest transition as my confidence has grown in my own thought leadership as a result of the podcast.
At 300 episodes, that's a lot of thinking about what am I going to say.
It sure is. Every day it's like, what's the next one going to be?
Yeah, I don't think people realize the work that goes into every single podcast episode. I think I saw something recently that most only last 7 episodes.
Yeah.
So congratulations
Thank you.
on 6 years and so many episodes. That shows great consistency. Something I'm working on with my podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Somebody actually reached out to me recently, probably somebody you and I both know, but I respect her so much. And she said, I can't believe how consistent you are, Nikki. And it's nice for other people to acknowledge that because you don't really, like, I don't really think about consistency that much, but it is very much a part of my personality. Like if I commit to something, I'm in, I'm doing it, I follow through. So yeah, 6 years, 300 and some podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not like you just open your laptop and you're like, I'm going to talk for 20 minutes. Like
Mm-mm.
it's a lot of work behind the scenes to be strategic, the editing, the launching, planning, all the things.
Yeah, all the things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I work with a lot of small business owners, entrepreneurs, as I know you do as well. What do you notice about sales when it comes to the difference between someone who is a salesperson for a company and they're selling their product versus an entrepreneur that maybe was a nurse and now has their own business and they have to do sales? What do you notice about how they both approach it?
Well, one, somebody who has come from a different kind of background, like you said, like a nurse in this case, and now they go into having this business where they're selling their own services, they haven't been trained on sales. So they often have some real big misconceptions of what selling is because they've had it done to them horribly, right? They hear the talk, the things that people say about sales people, and so here you are feeling very vulnerable, putting yourself out into the world with your services and your expertise. And then on top of that, you hear this negative, kind of feedback about what selling is. And so it oftentimes causes people to kind of shrink a little. Like, I don't want to be that pushy, aggressive salesperson. I don't want people to think I'm salesy and that all I care about is, getting money from them. And so then they shrink away from actually doing the thing that is going to allow them to make a bigger impact in the world, that's going to allow them to make, like, change lives, really. If you think about the services that, or even products that people are putting out to the world, whether it's that you're bringing joy or whether you're making change or whatever it is, but people will miss out on having that experience or benefiting from the product that you sell because you have a kind of a misconception around sales. And the misconception oftentimes is people think that selling is something that you do to another person, but sales actually is something you do with another person. And when you learn how to have with conversations, when you learn how to talk with people instead of at people, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this selling thing, it's not uncomfortable, it's not awkward, it's not weird, and it actually is being of service to the other person. Because your job in sales, and this is another misconception, is not to try to convince somebody to buy your thing or to hire you to do whatever it is that you deliver. Your job, I always say there's 3 things. One is to understand, does this person even have a need for what it is that you offer? The second thing is, do you have a solution that could possibly meet that need? And then the third thing, and this is the most important, and once you get this one done, like once this one is in existence, selling gets so much easier, not just for you, but for your buyer. And the third thing is, do you have permission to sell to this person? Because they might have a need and maybe you have a solution, but if you don't have permission and you're selling to them, it's very hard to earn their business. And frankly, they might think you're being pushy or aggressive or kind of gross, right? In those situations. But once the permission is established, like they're ready. They're ready for the offer. And so it takes a lot of that like angst out of the sales conversation when there's permission.
And do you see the negative if someone's not looking for those three things, the negative fit client that might
Yes.
result?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you brought that into the room because, yes, just because somebody wants to like maybe wants your thing, but if they don't really have a need, or maybe you don't have like the right solution that's going to meet the thing that they were hoping that you would do, now you end up with a client that you're like, oh my gosh, every time you have to, have a session with them, you're kind of dreading it, or they feel unsatisfied, which then gets into your head and makes you think like, oh, maybe I'm not good at this, or people, maybe I shouldn't be charging as much for what I'm doing because people aren't getting results. Yeah. So, yeah, you got to have the right fit client too, because if you got the wrong fit client, you spend a lot of time kind of up in your head feeling like, I'm a failure. I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't charge this much. People hate me. It's always the like, oh my gosh, the sky's falling. So, yeah, I love that you brought that into the room. It is important that you recognize who are your right fit clients, and the people who aren't the right fit, learning how to, what I teach is bless and release. Like bless and release, like you don't have to, make them feel bad about not being the right client for you. You can do it in a really kind way that sets them up for going to find the right solution. But also, you don't have to just take on anybody. Just because somebody wants to buy from you as a business owner, we get to decide. Do they actually
That's
get
the
to buy?
beauty.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that when someone has attracted the wrong client and still is working with them, they end up absorbing their input and changing things in their business
Mm-hmm.
without really realizing, wait, that's just one person. The thing that that person is complaining about is because they're not a good fit. It does not mean
Yeah.
you need to change your whole business because of that one person that's the loudest, and that's just because they're not happy.
Yeah, yeah, that is so true because I get this a lot where, someone will hire me to do a strategy session with them and they'll be explaining about, well, I need to change this and this. And when I check in with them, it's like, well, this one person one time said this thing to me. And it's like, okay, but you've had hundreds of clients that have been successful.
Right.
So we don't change things for one person. Like you don't make business decisions because one person, and oftentimes it's like the person who paid the least or the person who signed up for like the entry level thing, and now you're trying to change, pricing and all these things because it's like, no. One person doesn't get to dictate your business. And often, sometimes they're trying to change it and the person isn't even a paying client. It's like, well, I've got this family member and they just don't really
Oh,
believe in my,
amen.
right. It's like, no.
Yes.
The family member, like they count in the family, but they have no voice in the business, because if they wouldn't pay you money for what it is that you offer, their opinion doesn't count.
One of the biggest influencers I see that is not necessarily positive is the spouse.
Yeah.
The spouse, if they are not an entrepreneur and do not have small business or entrepreneur type experience, I'm working
Mm,
against them sometimes because they'll
yeah.
come back to the call and say, well, my husband said, it's like, well, we already went over, that's not what you want. So let's, and I get, we want our family to be excited about our business and involved, but I don't tell my spouse what he should or shouldn't do at work.
Right.
That's his expertise.
Right.
So, but I think it's common when you're first starting out because you don't know. And if you don't have a coach or someone to ask these things, you just kind of take everyone's opinions.
Yeah. Too many voices. What's the saying? Too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Like you're going to
Yes.
be in trouble.
Yes. So, speaking of voices,
Mm-hmm.
one of the ones that I see come up a lot with entrepreneurs is the voice coming up with the scarcity or limiting beliefs that gets in their way of sales, whether
Yeah.
that's believing that they're not going to be able to deliver what they promise or that the price is too high.
Mhm.
Where do you see that showing up in sales?
Well, it shows up a lot. I would say there are two things that the two most common things that happen in the selling process from the seller's perspective that are deal killers is one, we project our limiting beliefs onto somebody else, right? We're like, well, I would never pay for, I would never pay this much for this service. It's like, yeah, because you already know it. Like you've already invested the time, the energy to learn this thing. So to you, maybe you wouldn't pay that much, but for somebody who's looking for a change, they very well would be happy and delighted. So this projection of limiting beliefs is the biggest, like, oh, it's just such a hindrance in the selling process. And then the second thing is we hallucinate and we act as if we can read people's minds. And I always tell my clients that if psychic is not listed as your profession, you do not get to read somebody's mind. You do not get to sell from someone else's wallet. You don't get to decide what they think about your pricing. You don't get to decide ahead of time what they're going to say next. And so I spend a lot of time teaching questions. Like, what are the questions that you actually should be asking in these conversations, because that's where the gold is. Like what the person actually says is much different than what you think they're going to say. And you might be looking for ways to reaffirm that you are right, but that isn't going to help you in sales. Like being right it's not the objective here. The objective is to serve. The objective is to, again, find out, does this person have a need? Do I have a solution? Can I meet that need for them? And do I have permission? Sorry, the third is, do I have permission to put that in front of them? So in that case, learning how to manage your internal state of mind is also crucial to the selling process. Because if you're somebody who goes into a meeting and you're like, oh, I think they're thinking this about me, and oh, well, maybe I should just, they asked about price, so I'll just knock a few $100s off in hopes that that would be the right price for them, and like you make these like decisions in the moment because you're kind of up in your head, and that is a mistake in the selling process. You want to be present in the conversation. So learning how to manage your internal state of mind before you go into a meeting, before you have a call with somebody, is crucial to success. And I find that, I mean, this is something like, I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here, right? Like professional athletes who are at the top of their game, they actually do things to manage their internal state before they walk onto the field, right? Like people who are, performers, same thing. They do things to get themselves in the right state of mind. So there's no reason as a business owner that you can't do something to manage your internal state before you get onto that call, before you start the conversation, because it is about being resilient. And it's not about having a script that you can be like, well, I'm going to say this, and then they're supposed to say that so that I can then say this next, right? Like that's that I'm anticipating what the conversation is going to be. That's when you're back hallucinating and acting as if you're psychic. But that's not actually how sales conversations go. So if you can show up and be resilient, your best version of yourself for that day, in that moment, in that meeting, and you can go, well, I can just be in conversation. I know this, I know the kind of the structure of a sales conversation, which is what I teach. I know the structure, like I know what step we're on, but I don't have to have like the perfect words, because it's not about having the perfect script. It's about paying attention to the other person. What did they just say? What would be a potential response here? And if you're not sure what to say in any sales conversation, this is like the best tip that I can possibly give you. If you're not sure what to say next, ask a question. Doesn't matter even what the question is, just ask a question because it will help direct the conversation.
Yeah. I think my biggest lesson with that was someone who shared with me how much they spent on a program, and it was 10 times the cost of my program, and said she was interested in rejoining my program, but asked for a discount. It was that, okay. No,
Yeah.
definitely not. And I see that as an evolution for business owners once they start working with you or a coach or someone, and they realize I need to just say the full price and not offer a discount before they even have the opportunity to pay my full price.
Right.
And that's making the decision for them, like you said.
Yes. Yeah. That's selling from someone else's wallet. Knock it off.
Right. Or you have a speaking event and they say, oh, thank you for being so affordable. Like, shoot,
Oh, dang it. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
wasn't my goal, but I guess I should have asked for more.
Right. We're all work in progress. We're all
Yeah.
learning. But
Yeah.
realistically, getting the price out there and waiting and allowing them to have a response is a really effective thing. And just because somebody asks for a discount doesn't mean that if you don't give a discount that they still won't sign up for your program, right? Like some
Hmm.
language that I teach, if somebody asks for a discount and that's not an option for you, then you say, "Thank you so much for asking. This program actually doesn't offer any discounts. And we'd love to have you be a part of it. Would you like to join?" You just follow up with the like, "Thank you for
Hmm.
asking. No, would you like to join?" invitation. And when you do that, then they get to go, "Oh, yeah, yeah." Because, the thing about discounts, I think people often get like freaked out about them, but don't, because some of us have been trained to ask for discounts and we've been
Hmm.
rewarded for asking for discounts, right? So don't, I actually teach that as a buying signal. If somebody asks for a discount, it is a buying signal. And a buying signal is a verbal or nonverbal cue that somebody gives that indicates interest. So if a discount is being brought into the conversation from a prospect, I want you to be like, oh, ding, 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 buying signal, like, oh, potential opportunity here to invite them to the next step. Now, if you want to give them a discount, we can talk through what that kind of language needs to sound like. Because if you're giving a discount, you need to get something in return.
I
That
agree.
otherwise you create an imbalance of power and the dynamic of the conversation, and that's not good for the business and or for the relationship and the trust with the other person. So, but if the answer is like no, then just say, "Thank you so much for asking. There are no discounts on this particular program, and I'd love to have you be part of it. Would you like to join?" And then zip it and wait, see what they say next.
I love it because there are some people that's just how they approach every
Mm-hmm.
sale is there something, is it, or they really are on a tighter budget, but I always think people spend money where they see the value. And
Mm-hmm.
there are some situations, of course, where people literally don't have any room in their budget, but most business owners, they're choosing their budget for the year and they are getting to decide where they spend their money. And sometimes we spend a lot on software. Someone else might spend more on their outfits for when they're speaking. It's just a matter of, just because they don't purchase something else doesn't mean they're not going to spend that money with you,
That's
because,
right.
especially those that have an ROI for what they're offering, whether that's your health, your something with your child, people choose what they value to spend their money on.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, just don't be afraid of that one.
Right now, it's groceries is the big investment, right?
Oh my gosh, is it? Every time I go to the grocery store, I'm like, how much was it? What? Like, I swear that went up $1 over like the last 2 weeks. Like, what? Yeah,
I've unfortunately had some conversations in the aisles where I have not been able to hold back my what? $9. $9 for a 12 pack of Diet Coke? What?
mine's
Oh,
chips lately. Looking at the price of chips, I'm like, I mean, I happen to really love chips. And yeah, when I look at
uh-huh.
the price of chips right now, I'm like, what? Like a year ago, this was $2 cheaper a bag. This is
I know.
insane. Insane. I just saw a little bag in the store, like the bag that you get with your lunch for $2.28. Like they used to like put those in when you'd get a sandwich. Like what?
Right, right. To what we were just talking about, I bet there's things in our carts that are the splurge
Yes,
or the thing where I'm like, I'm not even looking at the price because
right.
I'm choosing to buy this for myself. But
That's
I
right.
will complain about something that's apples to apples or
Yes. Yeah,
my Diet Coke
that's
for
right.
sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned buying signals.
Mhm.
That's something that was a new concept for me when I believe I have your book. You have a buying signals book?
I do. That was the second book is
Okay,
called Buying
I do
Signals.
have
Yeah.
that one. Can you
Okay.
talk a little bit more about what those are or what people can
Yeah.
look for? Because I feel like in sales conversations or even networking, so I think people think of like a discovery call as like the sales conversation,
Mm-hmm.
but buying signals would also be present like at a networking event conversation, perhaps,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. They can be present in all kinds of situations. So I teach a 5-step process to a successful sales conversation. I call it the selling staircase. And this is actually the third book. And in the selling staircase, buying signals can actually come in any of the steps. So your job is to be on the lookout for them. And if you're not aware of what buying signals are, it is time to get on board, because you chances are you are missing them if you don't know what they are. And if you're missing your buying signals, you're missing out on working with some of your ideal clients. They're missing out on, like getting the advantage of what it is that you offer. So it's really, really important to pay attention to them. Now, I mentioned earlier that a buying signal is a verbal or a nonverbal cue that somebody gives that indicates interest. Now, in that book that you mentioned that I wrote on, just called Buying Signals, there are 17 of them in there. And let me give you like some of the more common ones that might feel, well, we talked about one, asking for a discount, total buying signal. But here's another one that people often miss, because the thing about the buying signal is you have to act on the buying signal in the moment, preferably. Not that you can't act on it later, but it's the hottest in the moment. So you want to act on it in the moment. And that means that you acknowledge the buying signal. And oftentimes it comes in the form of a question. So you answer the question and then you immediately follow up with an invitation. So that's how you check to see, is this a true buying signal? Because sometimes you might think, well, it could be a buying signal. And then you act on it and they go, oh, I was just asking. And you go, oh, okay.
Right,
Just move on
right.
with the conversation. So it's not like the end of the world if it turns out it wasn't a buying signal.
Yeah.
But
I feel like
so,
sometimes with online business, people are confused about what it really is or what you do, and that they're asking questions sometimes, even though
yeah,
they're not going to be a client, but
right.
they're like, so how much does something like that cost?
Yeah.
And it's hard to know sometimes what,
Yeah.
if it's real or not, so to
Yeah. And
speak.
so that's a perfect example of a buying signal. Somebody asks about pricing. Now, here's the thing about pricing is a lot of times people like the seller feels stunned in the moment of like, I'm not sure why they're asking. I'm not sure what to say. And I always say you have to actually have an answer to that question. And the answer can never be, I rarely say never in my business, but it can never be, it depends, even though there's some of you listening right now are like, but Nikki, it does depend. I know, I know, but that's not the answer to the price question. The answer to the price question is either if you know the actual price of it. So, what do you sell your lotion for? If you're selling lotion, like, what it is. So say the price, but what's your coaching program cost? Or what's it cost to work with you, Robin? Now you might go, well, I have a few different options, right? So what would I quote? You would just give a range then. You would say, well, I actually have a couple different ways that I work with clients. It could be anything from my group coaching program, and that runs, somewhere in the XYZ range, all the way up to private coaching. And that could be a 6-month commitment, and that could run, as much as blah, blah, blah. Then you follow up with an invitation. Is one of those interesting to you? Right? Or is that something you'd like to know more about? Right. So if somebody comes back to me and goes, like, if somebody just wanted to learn sales, Nikki, what would it cost them? Okay, that's a big question, right? And I could say, well, I have some books on sales and you can get them they range anywhere from $10 to $20. And I also do coaching, and I have a group coaching program. It's $147 a month. And I have private coaching programs that can run up to $10,000. What kind of a learner are you? When you think about learning sales, what would be the most interesting to you? So now I'm going to follow up with a question so that then we can continue on with the conversation. And if they're like, oh, I actually don't want to learn sales, I just know somebody who needs to, great. Then we can just move on with the conversation. Like, I don't like get offended that they ask me a price question, but I'm going to like follow up. I'm going to invite them, because a lot of times when my clients start to learn about buying signals and they start acting on them by issuing invitations, they come back and they're like, Nikki, I just booked 3 new clients. Like, okay, I had to do that. Well, I paid attention to buying signals and I issued invitations, and people said yes. And sometimes people who will say yes to you will even be surprised at themselves saying yes, because sometimes we ask questions that like kind of live in our like subconscious of like we don't even know yet why we're asking. But then when the person starts to talk about it, we go, oh, actually, I could use a business coach or I could use some sales strategy. Like maybe I should spend some time with Robin. Maybe I should be a part of her program, right? And or I should go to her event or whatever it is. But they might not even have that recognition yet until they kind of get into the conversation with you. So your job is to just issue invitations and make it so easy for them to say yes and or no. And either way is okay. Your job is to just put the invitation out there and let them decide.
And this speaks again to that self-regulation you talked about, that
Mm-hmm.
when you are in these conversations, you're not just spewing things. You're in the moment, hearing what they say, watching them and taking it in and then pivoting your answers versus just these are my questions, this is what I ask.
Yeah.
You mentioned nonverbal cues.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little about that? Like running away is a is a
Well,
no.
yeah, that's probably a no. If they run away, they try to get out of that conversation as fast as possible. Here's one that is often overlooked. This is a nonverbal. Is they're taking notes about what it is that you're saying. That's a nonverbal of like, I want to remember this, so I'm writing it down. So when somebody's taking notes about, the information, they're asking questions, they're in a conversation with you, and they're writing it down, that is definitely something that you should at least follow up with an invitation just to check and see. Now, again, the answer could be no, but that's okay. Like if they say no, that's all right. If they're not, like they're taking notes for some other random reason. Here's another big nonverbal. And actually, I don't know if anybody's really ever asked me about the nonverbal, Robin. So I feel like this isn't something I talk about that much. And I love that you're asking me. But another one is you get like these big body like yeses, like you're having a conversation and they're like, it's like now
I
I know
feel
people
it.
are listening and if you're not watching the video, but it's like that full body yes, where your whole head is going and even your shoulders are involved and maybe like even your abs are involved of like, yes. Or you say something and they're like, oh, no, no, no. Well, nobody wants that. Like they give you these big, and
Okay.
now some people are just big reactors, right? Um, but if you're getting these or they're like leaning in, this is another nonverbal. They're like leaning in. It's almost like, I want to get closer to what you're saying. That is another nonverbal potential buying signal, and it's worth checking out.
Hmm. Are there any like opposite of buying signals other
Mm,
than someone just saying I'm not interested? But are there things that are kind of like red flags? I'm thinking more like in a networking event when you're talking to someone. I know one just, I always hate when people are looking around the room at other people while they're
yeah.
talking to you. And you're
Yeah.
like, are you looking for a better, is this conversation not living up to the hype? You're looking for someone else to
Well,
talk
okay,
to.
so I want to defend just like be an advocate for some of those people that do this like look around.
Hmm.
Some people are high auditory processors, so they don't actually
Okay.
have to look at you in order to take
Okay.
in what you're saying. And so it's almost like they're still in the conversation. So I always think it's worth checking out. So one of the things that you can do to see like are they actually in the conversation is, let's say you're talking about something and you could just stop talking and just be quiet. And if they like keep looking around, that's an indicator like they're really not involved in the conversation.
Okay.
But if you stop talking and they like come right back to you and they have a follow-up question, or they're like, and what else? Right? They're still in it in the
Okay.
conversation with you. But if they are doing that, like, well, it was nice talking to you because you paused, they're not really in the
Yeah.
conversation. And so, yeah, bless and release, let those people go. Go talk to somebody who might actually be a better fit for you.
Yeah. That's a good perspective. And I appreciate you bringing up the auditory
Yeah.
um, side of that. That's
Well, not
great.
everybody is, but when
Yeah.
you find those people that are high auditory, like that's their
Sure.
strongest modality, we got to give them a little grace because most of their life they've heard people say, look at me when I'm talking to you,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
like
And
that.
those rooms are loud
Yeah.
usually and not very pleasant in my my opinion, a lot of those aren't my favorite networking events aren't where it's
Yeah.
just a big room of a lot of people talking. So my last question for you is we talk a lot in our mastermind group about the shoemakers' kids that don't have shoes.
Mm.
So as business owners, often what we do for other people, we don't do for ourselves as well as we should. And I'm curious if there is a sales situation that still makes you kind of nervous, or if there's any selling conversations where you have to stop and go, Nikki, remember who you are. You've got your system.
Yeah. I don't think anyone has ever asked me this question either, Robin. I love this so
Oh,
much.
good.
Okay, so in and actually this has been very I've been confronted. This has been very confronting for me in the last few months. Um, I have realized that I am super confident and comfortable in sales conversations. The piece that still makes me feel uncomfortable and challenges my confidence is the outreach. Because I put myself out there so often. I speak, I have the podcast, I write a weekly newsletter. Of course, there's presence on social media, there's YouTube videos and things like that. I am used to people coming to me and right? Like they come and
Mhm.
then want to have a conversation and then we have successful conversations. They become clients. Like that part is very, very easy for me. And I'm really good with questions. So if you just have a question for me, like I'm totally comfortable with that. But me trying to start the conversation, that like the very shy part of me, the introverted part of me wants to cringe and go sit in the corner and be like, I don't want to do this anymore. So, one of the things I've really been trying to stretch myself, one for my own business, but also because so many of my clients are doing this and they want feedback, right, on how to be more
Sure.
successful in the outreach. So I am intentionally making myself do outreach in a way that I have really not done in a long time.
Hmm. That's wonderful. That's a great answer. And I feel like people feel towards outreach similarly just to the sales conversations with, I don't want to be like the people that are cold
Right.
pitching me. I had
Yeah.
11 emails yesterday for podcast pitches. Majority had nothing to do with my topic, what I talk about, not personal whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be that person.
Right.
And it's like you just so don't want to have someone feel the way I feel about the people sending these pitches. I don't want someone to feel that way about me. So it's a tricky like
Yeah.
how, but if anyone can do it, you can do it, Nikki.
Thank
And
you. Thank
we'll love
you.
to learn from your experiments.
Yeah, it's been fun to it's been fun to I mean not fun, let's be honest, right? Change is
Yeah, yeah.
never really that fun, but
Interesting,
it's been
educational.
interesting. I have learned some things about myself, but also in the like what kind of outreach feels aligned with me versus what kind of outreach some people are recommending that just is so far out of alignment. But sometimes like doing things allows you to go like, that one's not for me, but this one,
Yep.
this works, right? Like this feels okay. So yeah.
Well, this has been such a delight,
Thank
and
you.
I could probably talk to you all day. And I do want to say thank you I do feel like my sales conversations are better from what I've learned from you, and they feel more natural and more like a conversation, but a strategic conversation, which for me is a great fit. So I thank you.
Thank you. And you're welcome. And that's the whole point of why I do what I do is that it should feel being a little bit more strategic in the conversation allows that confidence to show up, right? And that's
Hmm.
the whole point. Like the more confident you can show up in that conversation, then the more confident the other person feels about making that investment and
Yes.
taking that next
Yep.
step. And I always think like the investment, this is another kind of misconception is we think, oh, well, that person's making an investment in me, but that's actually not true. They're making an investment in themselves. And you want them to feel really good about the investment they're making in themselves. And so being confident and feeling more strategic in the conversations, it just changes the game.
Well, where can other people find out about you, about working with you, or following you online?
Well, thank you. I can I offer a gift to your
Of
audience? Is that
course,
okay?
please.
So one of the things I also find that people struggle with is the follow up. Like, what do I write in my follow ups? Like, how often do I follow up? So I put together a very simple guide. It's called the Sales Follow Up Made Easy. And it guides you through like, how many days do you wait? What kind of a message do you send? Here's an example of a message you might send. So you can get that by going to yoursalesmaven.com/easy follow up. That will be my gift to your audience. I'm happy for you to go and get that. There's no obligation. You put your email in, it gives it to you. And as a podcast listener, if you want to check out my podcast, Sales Maven. So thank you so much.
I will put all those links in the show notes. Thank you so much, Nikki. I so appreciate you being here.
Thank you.